give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analysts, your boys from the Draft Deck NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA Podcast Network. My name is Corey Teleba, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, how we doing today, brother?
We're doing. It's a good day. A lot of exciting time. A lot of exciting time. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of exciting stuff going on. Good start to the pod today. We're in March, and
oh yes,
that means the madness is happening. So that's always exciting. But I'm ready to go. I'm excited. We're talking about a good player today. Wow, am I okay?
You're on fire. He's on fire.
But I'm ready to rock. I guess, maybe, hopefully.
Let's rock today. Yes, we are covering a very exciting prospect. We have Taylor Hendricks of UCF on the docket today. He is a freshman forward. I guess position is, one of the topics of conversation I'm sure we'll hit. He is he will be 19.6 years old on draft night. He is listed at 6'9", 210 pounds. Did not find a reported wingspan for him at the moment. He is playing 34 minutes a game, averaging 15.6 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists to 1.4 turnovers, 0.9 steals, 1.7 blocks, while shooting 49% from the field, 41% from the three-point line, 79.6% from the free throw line, true shooting percentage of 60.6, PER 23.7, box score plus minus of 8.6. So all very good numbers for one Taylor Hendricks out of UCF, which I attended for a semester until they dropped my major. Beautiful campus.
Oh, very nice.
Beautiful campus. You saw some, alligators on the morning commute in. It's a whole thing. Breaking down Taylor Hendricks' draft stock preseason, this was a guy who was not some super highly touted prospect. He was not on draft boards at the time. He did not make the first iteration of the top 40 Draft Deck IPO. Currently, however, ESPN has him at 13, The Athletic at 19, Tankathon at 21, Draft Digest at 18, Bleacher Report at 11, The Ringer at 10, No Ceilings at 18, although I think that when we do our updated big board next week, I would anticipate a rise based on some of the conversations in the group text. That's an average stock price of 15.7. He did rank 15th on the February draft update at noceilingsnba.com. So, Albert, I ask you every episode, is Taylor Hendricks stock price too high, too low, or is it just right at 15.7 right now?
15.7 seems pretty good. The funny thing is, Corey, I went into our database to find the last big board I put in there, and for whatever reason, mine is gone. Or actually, all of ours are gone, unless I'm tripping out.
I think you have to, Nathan finagled it. You have to click like a little button. This is going to be embarrassing for you because you've been talking about how good you are at Excel.
No, I didn't realize you put in a new one, but you're right. Okay, I found it. Here we go.
Shout out to Nathan.
This is not my best episode. Slow start.
There's nowhere to go but up.
I'm the Taylor Hendricks of this pod. Here we go.
That's right.
So currently, on the last big board that I did, I had him at 29th. And I think the reason why I had him at 29th, and we kind of discussed this a little bit, I don't remember if this was on air or off air, but I think the way that actually, I believe the last time we did a big board pod, I talked about this with Hendricks, where I had a couple of questions about him. I think the way that he was being perceived and talked about was a little confusing for me, and then you gave me some clarity. So yeah, he's definitely going to be higher on my board, but 15 doesn't seem ridiculous. It doesn't feel too low, nor does it feel too high, in my opinion. Obviously, I think I'll get closer to 15 on the next board. So for me, I think it feels just right for now.
And I think that is, a pretty appropriate take. It's level-headed. There are people who have him higher up on the internet, and I think that's fair too. And I think I'll give that perspective of the argument at some point. I'm gonna have him somewhere between 10 and 15, I think. And because earlier today I was thinking about it, and I was like, I think I'm gonna have him like closer to 10 than 15. And then I went and looked at my big board, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of interesting players here.
Mhm.
Right. So a lot of it is going to be, how much do you weigh that potential of maybe some of these wings versus maybe the safety of what Taylor Hendricks could bring to the table here. And I think that's going to be kind of the argument, because, I've talked to some NBA people who work in the league, and I think that, Hendricks is a really popular guy on the internet, and for good reason. But I think that there are going to be some teams that are a little higher versus lower, because I think some teams kind of see him for what he is. And maybe there's going to be a team that's like, I think we could turn him into something that he's not currently at UCF, because he's in college and these kids get better. So at 15, which is right on the border of the lottery, at this point, I think that's like, I'm not like, this is a catastrophe that this is what his draft stock is. I think that he's a solid player, and I think there are guys who you can talk yourselves into potentially higher ceilings, and if you value that, that's going to put those guys higher on your board, where if you value maybe a more, I don't know, realistic outlook, you might value Hendricks more. So I think it's fair. Now, I'm going to give you $10 to invest, as I usually do. And this was a tricky one, because I tried going with guys who were kind of similar to each other. And what I quickly realized is that there are not a lot of guys in this draft who are kind of like Taylor Hendricks. So, and I think that actually helps him as a candidate to potentially go a little bit higher at a certain point. So I'm going to give you $10 to invest. You can split that up between Taylor Hendricks, Noah Clowney, and Leonard Miller.
Oh, God. See, okay, these were not names that I was expecting. I thought you were going to give me. I actually thought you were going to throw Jett Howard in there just to mess with me. But
no, I was not. I didn't want that, and that was the part of the trouble with me coming up with names, is that like I think you could kind of see why I would include Clowney.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I think Leonard Miller is like, you kind of have to squint a little bit to see it, but you get it. Because the other name I was thinking is like Khalil Ware, maybe, but like, do we need to have that conversation right now?
No, we don't. No, we don't. Okay, I can give you an answer. I'm going to give you an answer, because I think where I'm at, because we're submitting big boards this weekend, been doing some stuff on my own, and I feel like Hendricks, I'm not all the way there like you are, where he'd be closer to 10 for me. No slight against you. I totally see it after doing the deep dive. And I think I will be closer to 15, like you said, like, the average came out to be, which would put him at the highest of the three that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I think I could do, because my thing with Leonard Miller is like, I absolutely hate how his jump shot looks.
Yeah.
I saw it.
it's not like one of the prettier jump shots.
Especially like seeing it up close. I was like, oh, like that. What is that? I'm not sure, So, okay, let's do this. Let me stick to my guns here.
Okay.
I'm going to give Hendricks $5.
Okay.
I'm going to give Clowney 3 and Leonard Miller 2. 5-3-2 is how I'll go about it.
Okay. That's fair. And I like how you split that up. I think I'm going to give Hendricks 6.
Okay.
I'm going to give, and then I'll split the rest. I'll give Clowney 2 and Leonard Miller 2. Because I do like Clowney, and I think Leonard Miller has been interesting this year. But I think for me, I just see the translation for Hendricks a little bit clearer. JH on YouTube says $10 to Taylor Hendricks in the chat. So shout out to the chat. And we'll get to some of the questions in the chat that aren't Taylor Hendricks specific, at some point later in the pod. So I think now that we've invested in Hendricks, I think now it only makes sense that it's time that we start breaking down the games and the strengths and the weaknesses of one Taylor Hendricks. So where do you want to start with Taylor Hendricks?
We should stay true to the brand and start with the shooting because he's good at it. The guy's good at it. So let's start there.
The guy is good at shooting, and I think that if you are a guy who is looking at somebody who you value from the forward position, a guy who could really space the floor, you are going to quite enjoy what Taylor Hendricks brings to the table. This is a guy who it's very easy to see, and UCF a lot. And it's, I kind of wish that they would get a little bit more creative with him at times because he does have some limitations as well. It's very easy to see that is a very pretty jump shot. He's got a high release. He's tall. It's smooth. It's repeatable. There's good follow through. Like, this is something that you're like, okay, this works at the NBA level, right? And that's why he's so intriguing, why he's getting lottery buzz, because when we get into some of the defensive stuff later on, you look at a guy who's a 3-and-D archetype, and it's easy to see the translation and how seamlessly he would fit on, a ton of different rosters.
Yeah, Corey, I love everything that you said. He's gigantic. And the thing is, sometimes when you get these giant guys who can shoot, their jumpers kind of look like catapults, but his just looks very fluid and tight and beautiful and repeatable, and it's good. And my notes were like really complex. I wrote shooting looks pretty as hell. I really went deep there. And I was like, dude, it just looks freaking good, and it made me happy to watch. And look at his jumper right here. Bam.
Yeah, it's pure.
It's pure. It's quick. It looks really good. And once again, like, he's huge. I don't know what his wingspan is going to come out to be, but it looks pretty damn long. But once again, like, a lot of times these guys who have like super long arms, it looks weird, but just look at it. It's compact. It looks pretty. And I really like it a lot. Now, when we start talking about like the diversity of the shots that he's taken, I do think his shooting looks prettiest off the catch, is what I'd say. And we'll get into the other, types of shots that he's taken, but just straight up from the clips that you're showing us here, from what I saw on tape, the catch and shoot shooting is really nice. And that's going to be important considering, as a rookie, these are the most likely going to be the types of shots that he's going to be getting and is going to be asked to make. So here's another example: pick and pop. Look at this one. Bang. Beautiful.
Yeah. There's no hesitation. It's quick release, right? My one thing with him as like a pick and pop guy, the shot, I'm not worried at all. And this is just a more general thing with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a good screener. And when I say that, it's just like, he just doesn't do it. Like, it's just not for him. Like, he will ghost the screen. He will slip a screen. If he makes any contact with a player on the opposing team, it's just by accident. Like, he's just standing in the way. So, I do wish that part of his game was a little bit more refined, especially because we're saying like he is going to be a pick and pop guy early on, simple catch, shoot off of that. And I think, guards are so dynamic in the NBA that, like, is it going to be the biggest of deals? No. But at the same time, every split second matters in the league. Yeah. And, I think if you could give your guard just a little bit more space, I value that. Is it a deal breaker? No, I think it could be taught. Is it always learned? No. But, that's kind of my one thing with his, pick and pop ability is that, it's more of just a pop
For sure.
rather than anything else.
No, Corey, I think I really agree with what you just said, and it's something that I heard discussed on the Bill Simmons pod with Rob Mahoney, and he was talking about the effect that Jakob Poeltl has had on the Raptors, right? And before he got there, it was mostly just Scotty Barnes and Siakam and Boucher, and these guys are not they're not really known for their screen setting. But they bring Poeltl in there, and this guy's a huge guy who is a really good screen setter, and he's really enabled Fred VanVleet to get better looks. And you're talking about these split second seconds are getting added on to the ball handlers having a little bit more space, a little bit more wiggle room, and it does mean a lot. But Corey, I did want to follow up with what you're saying and say that the lack of physicality from Hendricks shows in the screen setting, but also in different areas of his game as well, which I know we're going to get into. But just going back to the shooting, I'm with you. I really like it a lot. But we'll see more. Yeah. So off the dribble, though, Corey, I wanted to get your thoughts because I think it's a mixed bag. I personally thought that. So when he's shooting off the catch, I feel like he does a really good job of engaging the core and engaging the lower half. But I felt like off the dribble at times, it was a little raw, to say the least. I think at times, like, his footwork is nowhere near the same when he's shooting it off the dribble. And a lot of times, like, I think he just doesn't have that same lower half strength, and he can short arm a lot of shots. But wanted to get your thoughts on that because it does look pretty different, in my opinion.
Yeah, because he's got a very narrow base and shooting. You know what I mean? Like, so there isn't a ton of like core or lower body strength there. The video that we're playing, for those who are just listening in podcast form, this is something I do want to point out about him as an offensive player. When he catches the ball on a triple threat and he faces up, he does it in a goofy stance. Like, most righties are going to use their left foot as their pivot foot, and that's going to put you in a more natural position to shoot it. It's going to put you in a more natural position to attack going to your strong hand. He prefers, and Evan Mobley did this a lot, and I think it's to at least Taylor Hendricks' detriment. Like, I think he'd be better if he cleaned it up. He prefers to use that right foot as a pivot, and it could look funky, it could look weird. I mean, this video that we've been playing for the YouTube, like, he kind of gets the defender to lose their footing almost, as an ankle breaker, and he ultimately knocks down the shot right in their face. But when we talk about him, as a creator who is doing more kind of like off the bounce, it looks, he's shooting, I think, per synergy like 30% off the bounce. Yeah. So it's clearly very much a work in progress. And, for me, like, I'm not really a buyer in his self-creation ability.
Yes.
And, I've heard people throw around, like, I think he could be a wing or a 3. And, like, I don't see that. I don't know if NBA teams are going to see that. I know certain teams aren't going to see that. And to me, he's very, like, much so, like, almost like a pure 4. Because he also kind of lacks strength, and not in his upper body, but in his lower half, that I don't know if he's strong enough to play the 5, at least not for like, in more traditional lineups, maybe in some small ball lineups. Sure. But, it's very rudimentary. His ball handling is very rudimentary, and it makes it, even though like he can get shots off because he's tall and he has a high release, his handle is very sloppy. It's very rudimentary, and Steven did a great job when he went to see Taylor Hendricks live and got to ask him some questions last week, in that, he was like, what are you working on? And Taylor Hendricks said, like, I'm working on my handle. Yeah. My thing is, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get his handle to a point with where it's at currently, where he's going to be able to create at the next level, and where teams are going to be like, we want you to do this. This is worth investing these reps in.
Corey, I think I'll say this. I think the tricky thing with him is that I think a lot of NBA teams are going to invest in the exact thing that you're talking about. I think a lot of teams are going to look at the shooting. I think they're going to look at his like functional athleticism and be like, oh, okay, so we have him in the building. Now we can groom him into a wing. I hope that's not the case, right? But I feel like there would be a lot of NBA teams that might have that thought process, because I mean there are other examples of this in the league, right? But my biggest thing with him, just to kind of piggyback off of what you said, I mean, even like, so now that teams have a scouting report on him, they know that he can shoot. They close up pretty hard on him. And when they do, he'll do a little head fake and take like one dribble or two dribble or whatever. And it's generally sloppy. I think sloppy. What I wrote in my notes was clunky. Even when he takes it all the way to the rim, a lot of that stuff, like he's getting stripped all the time. And if he's not getting stripped, and even if there's like the slightest swipe, he's losing the ball. Physically, as you mentioned, right, he is lacking a lot of strength. So he's not great at taking contact nor finishing through contact. I can't even remember off the top of my head him having like a really nice finish through contact. But just overall, like I think I'm with you. Like the creation stuff is not there at all right now. I mean, when we even talk about like a guy like Jarris Walker, when we did him before the season, just looking off his high school stuff, he had real shake to him. The handle was tight. He could do stuff with the ball in his hands. Taylor Hendricks is just not that guy. He doesn't have that anywhere near even Jarris Walker, in my opinion. So I'm kind of with you. And even in the comp that I picked for him was a guy who's more of a 4, but even for him to reach that guy, he's going to need to tighten his handle by a lot, is what I'd say. So I'm definitely with you.
Yeah, for sure. The handle, and it's not only is the handle loose, and like in this clip we see he's just kind of like he dribbles into his teammate or whatever, but like he also doesn't necessarily, like, it's not his game. You could tell he's not used to doing that, and so he doesn't necessarily even have the recognition of like spacing on the court. Like in this clip he's literally just dribbling into like a sea of blue jerseys, like right into the help. He doesn't have like the natural fluidity off the bounce. He doesn't have like shake. Like he tries to do a little crossover and there's just, guys beat him to the spot. They collapse on him and he doesn't really know what to do when he gets himself in trouble. So it looks weird. So like there's going to be more room in the NBA on the court, and that will help. But I think just overall, when I'm looking at him as a creator, I just think fundamentally he is at such a basic beginner level, like that it's hard to imagine this is something that is a part of his game for a while. Like if you see, like he's turning, his head's down in this clip against Temple, and he again drives right into the help, and he doesn't have the handle to get himself out of it, and he just like, it's almost like what's your plan here? Like what is the high end outcome of you dribbling into 4 red jerseys? Because I don't think he's a good passer out of a dribble. And I think that's part of like the selling point for him. His game is very easy. Catch and shoot threes, space the floor, and play defense, block shots. Like that is a good selling point. Yeah. But beyond that, like it's hard to see that high end like star outcome with him, because stuff like this where he's just, it's just a little bit raw. It's just a little raw.
No, Corey, I think what you're describing and what you just said is exactly why I had him lower on my personal board for so long, was because I think the lens that people were looking at him through was what bothered me the most. Like there was nothing about Taylor Hendricks when I watched him that made me go like, oh, like this guy is going to be able to play the wing. Like I just couldn't see that at all. And the more that I felt like I saw people saying that, or, kind of referring to him in that through that lens, it confused me a lot, because like you said, and also Corey, what you described as a role in terms of a guy who is 6'9", can, consistently shoot really well from outside, and also is going to be like an 80% free throw shooter while also playing solid on ball and off ball defense. Like that's a really, really valuable NBA player and a prototype. that I think a lot of teams would be looking for. So I hope our listeners don't think that that's you kind of slighting the guy. I think it's just really hard to be a superstar. It's really hard to be a number one option in the NBA, the freaking greatest basketball league in the world. Not everyone gets to do that. And just because you're not that doesn't mean you're not a really, really good player. So I think with everything that you're saying, Corey, and what we're saying right now in terms of his ability on the offensive side of the ball, the 15 to 20 range isn't crazy for a guy of that mold.
Let's take a quick break, and then I want to expand on this. So, and that's why I think that there are going to be highs and lows for Hendricks as where people value his draft stock, because he's not the most creative offensive player. Now, are there flashes of some of these things? And like when you really squint hard, can you see it? Sure. Like this is it's a okay possession, right? He dunks on Houston. He crosses Jarris kind of. Juwan Roberts doesn't rotate over for the help, which he should have, but that's fine. When you got a guy like Jarris Walker, you're probably expecting he's gonna be able to wall that off at times. But even on this cross, it's very rudimentary. Like he almost loses the handle itself. It's on an empty side of the court. So like, yeah, can he maybe develop something like this where it's like one or two quick dribbles and attack the rim? I think that's the hope, right? Because when we talk about his offensive game, I think one of the things that I do think that he can develop is, and I want to see it more often, because sometimes I see it and I'm like, oh, let's go. Mm-hmm. Is that mid-range, like at the elbow? Like I want to see that you're at the elbow and you just face up and you just knock down that shot. Like you don't think you have the height. Like this is where he could create a little bit. Bang, smooth, like nothing to it. You could just shoot over people. You're tall. You have a smooth shot. There's nothing to think about. Create space, face up, look him in the eyes, bang.
Corey, he also does a pretty, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying he's like great or really good at it, but another thing that I noticed with him is he likes to catch it on the left block, kind of like baseline area, face up, and then do a little, over the right shoulder fade away on the baseline that, it went in a couple of times. So it was pretty good. But, I think it's good that he has a shot or a couple of shots from the mid range that he feels comfortable in. The one thing I will say, though, that we mentioned before is that like off of, hard closeouts, when he does take a couple dribbles inside and then he's pulling up off the dribble is kind of where I think he gets in trouble. But when he catches it right there at the elbow and he can kind of face and shoot, it does look a lot better. So,
yeah, like, this is, like you said, this is where you kind of get in trouble. And it's what I do want to see him develop, but I think he kind of rushes it and he goes the wrong way. Yes. Like wait until the clear out happens. And instead of going left where it's like a little bit awkward for you, into the middle of the paint, drive right here, or just like be patient, clear out, balls tie, jab fake, and just like shoot the shot there. But I do think this is the next development after developing that mid-range shot that, okay, I can face you up. I'm a threat. You have to pay attention to me. And so now I can get into a quick move and actually make something go into the hoop. And I think this was, a good example of it. He's patient, waits for space, 2 dribbles, a quick turn, and he's good. I think he's got good touch around the rim in the post. And, I think maybe UCF should feature him there a little bit more, but also he's not like super strong and, he's not like a guy you want to force feed touches, but I do think there are opportunities to get him looks there, even if it's on like quick dives or whatever. But like, I think this kind of little combo here, it's so simple. Like this would come right off the face up and now they're guarding you for the shot. They're playing up a little bit and you might catch a slower footed big or a guy who's maybe a little bit smaller. And now you could take advantage, use your height and your length to attack.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Corey. But I mean, just kind of going back to what I said before too, it's like theoretically, this is a great kind of shot for him to take. It's just right now where he's at in his development. A lot of the times, as you mentioned, it just feels like he panics a little bit. and he's just going at like a crazy ass pace. And when he does that, he ends up losing the ball a lot more than he ends up, keeping and getting a shot up. And of course, like sometimes he gets fouled or whatever, but a lot of times it is pretty freaking sloppy. But this clip that you're playing here is actually pretty freaking, like, this looks pretty damn good. But
it's simple.
Exactly.
When he keeps things simple, keep it simple, stupid, it looks fluid. And again, he's faced up, goofy footed, uses that left foot to jab. But it's 2 dribbles and a shot. And like, that's his bread and butter. His bread and butter is just keeping the game as basic as possible, because when he does that, it's fluid. And he has physical tools that allow him the benefit to do that.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody has that to them where they could do that, but he does. So I think that's something that he could use with his shot. I mentioned the post up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that he's got good touch on these little like fadeaways, but again, it's simple. It's on the block. He's not trying to overpower anybody. He gets position, one dribble
on this one, yeah,
and just a clean look. And I like that. I love when he keeps it simple. I love it. It's really nice. And you understand why he could fit into an NBA offense, who it's like, all right, you're playing off of, different guys like who are actual number one options making hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't need you to create. You're not at UCF anymore. So how can you contribute in a really simplistic way, but a really valuable way? And it's little stuff like this, taking advantage, little mismatches, that little turn over the right shoulder, little fadeaway jump shot using your height and your length and your touch.
Boom. Yeah, that's
really good stuff.
Yeah, that's the exact shot I was talking about before. Like, this looks good. Look at that. That's nice, And he looks comfortable taking it as well, which is an important thing. Because Corey, like, if you notice, a lot of the shots that he like clanks and like they're really bad misses, he doesn't look comfortable. As you mentioned before, it just looks like he's taking shots that he's not used to taking. That Patrick Ewing would probably be asking, like, when did you practice that? Do you ever practice that? What kind of shot is that? But it's really evident with him. Like, when it's a shot that he's comfortable taking, it does look fluid. It looks natural. But right here over the right shoulder again, very nice. But like when it's something exactly, but it looks natural. It looks correct. Like, it looks like, oh, like he's taken this shot before. Patrick Ewing will not be berating him for taking this shot. But other times it looks really clunky and weird. So maybe, with Hendricks, he's one of these players where it's like really evident when he's comfortable and taking a shot that he's used to taking, and also like it's really evident when not.
Yeah, I think so. And luckily, he's not going to have a ton of freedom. Like, I don't think he's this top 5 guy that is just going to be force-fed reps. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be like, hey, man, do what you're good at. So that's good news for him as a prospect. This is, I think, maybe a little bit of what you mean of like when it's a little out of control, right? Yeah. It's like, this is a drive from the top of the key. For everybody listening, he's faced up. He's trying to do a little bit with the dribble. You're not really losing anybody with his handle. Even he's throwing a little in and out fake in there on the defender, but like, you're not really crossing anybody up. It's very straight line drivey. And then
no burst on the shot too.
Yeah, he doesn't have a quick first step.
No.
He is a good athlete, but he doesn't have that explosive quick first step, and he doesn't have the strength at this point to dip that shoulder and move the guy off his spot consistently in these scenarios, especially when it's a little clunky, it's a little awkward, because he's doing something that is, uncomfortable for him, which is trying to create off multiple dribbles. So that's something that I don't think is going to be a big part of his game at the NBA level. I just don't.
Yeah. No, I agree. It just reminds me of like RJ Barrett in his rookie season. I remember he was playing, I don't remember if it was this, I don't remember what team Jimmy Butler was currently playing for at the time, but he tried to like go through Jimmy Butler's chest and like totally didn't work. And then Butler literally like grabbed him and was like, hey man, like next time you do this, like you got to go a lot harder into the chest, and then that'll create the separation. It was like a little coaching moment, even though like we play for different teams. And I was reminded of that watching these clips, just thinking like, oh, like Hendricks just needs to learn that a little bit more, and that'll help. But as of now, like also like even like when he got to the rim on the clip that you just showed, like just zero burst because he wasn't able to move his man at all. And then he just kind of got overpowered even as he was taking the shot. So hopefully that comes.
Quick aside and quick Jimmy Butler story. So we all know that Jimmy Butler, after the Vanessa Carlton video, likes to sing, right? And we all know his affinity for country music. Jimmy Butler is also a personality. He's a character. So one of my best friends is a Sony songwriter. Okay, he has a publishing deal. So he writes songs for country artists in Nashville. And he is he had a punk rock band growing up, and basically now every kid who had a punk rock band growing up that didn't give up on music writes country songs in Nashville. So basically what these guys have, like their own managers, like songwriters, and they set up writing sessions for their writers. Because if you're if you have a publishing deal, you have to, submit a certain amount of songs in a certain amount of time. So they set up these writing sessions, hoping that you can get something, and then you cut it if it's good, and you write with a group of people, and that's how the magic is made. Currently has a top 40 song that he wrote for Jelly Roll. So if you're a country fan and you like Jelly Roll, my guy wrote that song that's currently on the radio. So bringing this back to Jimmy Butler loves country music, and Jimmy Butler gets himself involved in writing sessions for country music.
Wow.
So my guy's number one goal for this summer is to, and his guy knows Jimmy's guy, he's trying to set himself up with a country writing session with Jimmy Butler.
Wow.
Because Jimmy is like that.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say you are also your guy's guy. So hopefully,
shout out Joe Ragasta, who was my first episode of Home and Away for the podcast feed.
Hopefully Joe can get you in the building too. That would be dope.
It would be dope. Let's get back to Taylor Hendricks. Here's something that I want to talk about that I don't see enough from him. I think that he is a little too stationary at times, and maybe this is just the scheme. And I think he does a better job of moving off the ball when UCF is playing against the zone. I think there's typically it's like, all right, I know I have to flash to the free throw line, or I'm moving baseline to baseline, corner to corner, whatever. So he does there's a little bit more movement there, but when he does it, he's good at it. I just don't think he does it enough. And I want to see him get easy baskets off of cutting to the hoop, finding gaps, finding space. Right here, he does a good job. Another Jarris Walker blunder, loses sight of Taylor Hendricks, slides right behind him on the baseline, and creates an easy dunk for him off a dump off from the guard. So, like, if he doesn't cut, his guard is in no man's land. He's screwed. Like, this does wonders for your offense, and it keeps the defense guessing. Because now Jarris has to wonder, like, oh, he's not just going to stay in the corner. He's actually going to move around. That's going to make his job harder because now he has to be aware of more things. So it's something I do think he's good at. It's something I don't think he does enough.
I agree, Corey. I believe on the season, he's only missed one dunk. If I'm not, he's 33 for 34 on dunks on the season, which is pretty good. Around the rim, he's 81 for 125, which is 65%.
That's good.
Numbers. Those
good
are
numbers.
Good numbers, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, Corey, just to kind of like piggyback off of what you said, like if he were to create more opportunities for himself around the rim, well, what does that lead to, right? It's the inverse of what we usually talk about with shooters. It's, if you're shooting really well from outside, that'll give you more opportunity around the rim. For a guy like Hendricks, he's a guy who is proving to be really good around the rim. If he can continue to find easy opportunities there, well, the inverse of that is I'm sure that'll lead to him, finding more opportunities from outside as well. So I think what we've talked about a lot on this episode with him is like kind of how he gets to his shots and how he, creates opportunities for himself. But the overall shooting itself, whether it's around the rim or wherever, is pretty damn good. And also, like I mentioned before in passing, but one of the great, metrics for us, or, signs for us when it comes to shooting, is free throw shooting. And he's right there at 80% on, not super high volume at 3.4 attempts per game, but 79.6% is very good for a guy like him. So
He's for sure. Now let's transition to his passing, because I think if you think somebody's going to be a wing, you want them to pass a little bit. You know, you want them to be able to keep the ball moving, maybe dribble, drive, create. Like the NBA, like there's a lot to be asked if you are a true wing, and I don't see it in those circumstances all the time. Little nice little face up. Here you go. That's finds a cutter. One or two dribbles off here. When he keeps it simple and he's patient and he has time to survey and see the court, I think that he's got okay passing feel. Right? Like because he's tall and he could see over, defenders. So I think he's got okay passing feel when he has time. I think it shows a lot when he gets to operate out of the post.
Corey, I think it also happened because like they played against a good amount of zone too. So when you'd flash to the top and catch it there were a couple nice like high-low passes that he made into to the baseline that I thought were really nice. But overall, I'm kind of with you. Oh, that's it. That's nice. Now I'm not gonna freak out, but no, that's a pretty good pass. But yeah, like I I think I saw somebody mentioned a tweet a couple weeks ago. Like anytime a draft analyst sees like a weak side skip pass, they freak out. But in this moment, look at this. Look at his arms, dude. That's a pretty nice pass. But overall, I'm with you. I think the passing is there, but it's not anything, in my opinion, anything to write home about. We're not talking about some elite level passer, but some of the flashes are good for sure.
Yeah, and for the people who are listening in podcast form, basically he's getting the ball on the block, the double comes. It looks like it should be a turnover, but he gets the ball up high and he just whips it from basically like 2 steps outside of the right block to the weak side corner on a rope. Shooter misses the shot, but it's like it's a beautiful pass. And he does have that weak side vision. Like he does. He's shown it multiple times because he's tall. This is good. He takes a little retreat dribble, knows where his shooter is. Count that one. That's an assist, right? Catches it on the right block, sees the double coming, reads it. He's patient. The game's not moving fast. Sees the doubles coming, gets rid of it, knockdown.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. These are pretty good ones. I will say, Corey, once again, like the flashes are there. I did feel like a lot of his passes were kind of like, break glass and emergency type of passes.
They are. He's a play finisher.
He is. But that's good. That's going to be.
It's not a bad thing.
Be his role. That's exactly. I'm with you, dude.
And because when he tries to do a little too much, I think things get weird. I think things get weird. Like I don't know what the plan is there. Like basically, he's trying to, and he does this, fairly frequently, where he'll like try to like fire these passes through really tight windows.
Yeah.
And it's the risk reward proposition just doesn't really seem to be there a lot of times. Like I just don't think he has that pacing and that timing, and he doesn't have the reps now. As we talked about with Drew Peterson when he came on the show last week to break down film with us, you can't make certain passes if you don't try them. Yeah. You can't get better if you're not doing it in real time. So will this ultimately help him? Well, if he learns he can't make those passes, it'll help, right? It'll help him know when he can and can't do that. So is there value for him from an NBA perspective trying to do stuff like that? Absolutely. Is it helpful to, efficient offensive basketball? Not very. And he just doesn't, he's just not a natural passer. Like,
no,
he's a pass from the 3-point line, telegraphed, like on a post entry, 30 feet from the hoop. We don't need that from him. Like, get the ball to a guard. Like, I get it. There's a mismatch. There's a guard fronting a big on this possession, and he wants to. I do appreciate the fact he wants to punish a mismatch here, but he doesn't have a good angle. He's at the top of the key. Like, if anything, kick the ball to his teammate on the wing and enter the ball that way. You don't get the recognition, you don't get the assist, but you also don't throw this bad turnover.
Yeah. Corey, the running theme with Taylor Hendricks is whenever he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing, it looks freaking weird. Like, look at that pass. Obviously, if you're listening, you can't see it, but it just looks incredibly awkward. There's like no nuance at all to that pass. Like he's, as you mentioned, just absolutely telegraphing it. His body positioning even looks weird. He's like in like a half hunch over, and so clearly is passing the ball. Like it's gnarly. It's gnarly. He's one of these guys, Corey. He's got to stay within himself. He's got to learn
That's right.
to stay within himself.
And again, there is nothing wrong with staying within yourself. Like it's a strength. But there's a lot to like offensively. It may be simplistic. I think he's going to have that little mid-range 15-footer. I think he's going to be a pick and pop guy. He's going to be a floor spacer. I think he's a guy that you could put in the dunker spot. He's going to, rim run in transition. He's going to be really efficient on offense in his role because it's going to be simple. And look, if he develops it 5 years from now you understand why people might be higher on him. I don't know if he's going to get there. I don't think his, I understand the idea of his high end outcome doing that. I think he's much more likely to hit his median end outcome.
Corey, really quickly, you said simple is good. A margarita pizza, simple, elegant, beautiful, good every single time. So,
well, you've never had margarita pizza in, Ohio.
I don't want to ever.
Not to say, I don't want to hate on Ohio. Cleveland style pizza is its own style and it's very good.
Oh,
but
never heard of it, but okay.
It is, there's some sesame seeds on the crust. It's pretty good. Detroit style pizza.
Oh
good.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
I'm a Chicago deep dish guy. Obviously, I don't think anything's touching a solid New York slice, but from New York. But I'm just saying, unless you've had it in certain parts of the country that aren't accustomed to actually having that as their specialty, don't say that it's good every time. There's some variance.
Great point.
Let's talk about his defense.
Sure.
The thing that pops right away, that stands out, if you just baseline, you're looking at his numbers, right? It's the 1.7 blocks, right? He is a guy who you anticipate being a guy who could protect the rim in some capacity.
Yeah.
From the weak side, he's got good length, he's got good instincts, right? Not like this. He's not a super athlete, but he's a good athlete, and he's going to be a guy that can come over and at least intimidate, drivers attacking the hoop.
Dude, I mean, Corey, you mentioned the 1.7 blocks, but also 6.2% block percentage. That's pretty. I like that.
It's good. It's it's not. Do I think he's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. Defensive Player of the Year? Because I've seen those comps around. Like the guys like Jaren Jackson, like Mobley, like Anthony Davis, like they had like 12, 13, 14% block percentage. Like there is a very distinct and clear difference. But I do think Taylor Hendricks does a really good job as a rim deterrent. And herein lies, the issue with Taylor Hendricks, though. Like, at what position is he most valuable? Is his rim protection as a 5 most valuable? We said we don't know if that's where he's going to be best. Or is he going to be a guy who you have to, is going to be out on the perimeter, and so his rim protection isn't going to be quite as valuable as it might be in the college level. Right?
He's a 4. Give me 4. Sign me up for 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like him at that spot. That's fine, because I do think that defensively it isn't his only strength is swatting shots. It's just not. Like, I think that he really does have the ability to switch.
Corey, can we talk about his on-ball defense though? I wanted to pick your brain on this because this is actually a genuine question for me, because I think sometimes I don't remember who it was. It was in our group chat. We were talking about Zach Edey, right? And you guys were saying how a lot of people give him crap because of how his feet look at his size. I believe Nathan was saying he actually thinks that he has really good feet for his size. And I think like it's a visual thing, I think, for me as well, where sometimes I get confused. Like I'll see a big guy and to me, his feet look slow. And then I tell myself, wait a minute, he's gigantic. Maybe you have to recalibrate your expectations here, Albert. And like I have this like inner dialogue where I'm not sure whether I like a certain prospect's feet or not sometimes, especially like big men. So like watching Taylor Hendricks, there were moments where I was like, oh, look, like he's like fluid and he's moving well. Like this looks pretty good here. But then there are other moments where I felt like his feet were like really clunky and he was like crossing over his feet and kind of like, not really being able to like find his balance. So that's why I wanted to ask you how you felt, because for me, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, is ultimately what I'm trying to say.
So sometimes it looks really smooth.
Yeah.
And other times it looks a little awkward. And it's because I don't think he has the cleanest feet, but I think it comes from the fact that his hips are so tight.
Okay.
So this is where I buy into him as a defensive mover out on the perimeter. It's when he has a guy and he is shading him to a side and he can meet him at the spot laterally. I think sometimes, and I'll have a kind of a clip later, because I think it really typically happens almost when he's like more so like in a drop or like a soft switch or something like that, where he doesn't quite dictate the defensive possession and he gets caught. And because he's got those tight hips and he's caught flat-footed, he can get beat. But I do think that when he can dictate the possession like he does here, where he's clearly shading him to the sideline and then he's got him in a tough spot, he's going to a post up and now the shot clock's kind of low and, he's using his length to contest that shot. I think in these scenarios, he moves his feet pretty well and it doesn't matter what side he's on. I think that he has the quickness and the fluidity to move on switches too. Like when he knows that the switch is coming. Jamal Shed here, like, this is a good defensive possession, right? Jamal Shed's a great point guard for potentially the best team in the country. He steps up, switches, beats him to a spot, and then he's got great anticipation on closeouts. That's another one of his strengths, in my opinion, is that he just really knows when to contest these shots. So when it works, I think it looks really good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. And also, like, the thing with him is, like, he's got such good length, too. And as we've mentioned a couple of times already, like, good functional athleticism. Like, when it's on, it's on. It's just, like, I just felt like there were some times where... And of course, like, this is normal, right? For a guy who's, like, 6'9", 6'10", like, the smaller, twitchier guards are going to be hard for anybody at that size. So I can understand some awkwardness or whatever. But I think just for me, like, at times, like, I had to kind of recalibrate how I was viewing him to, like, be like, hey, he's actually a good on-ball defender. Like, it's just sometimes these smaller guards are going to give everybody trouble. So
well, this is a good example of what you're talking in this clip here that we're playing against Cincinnati, because the end result is he gets a good contest on the shot, but you could see him kind of fidgety and fumble his footsteps because the guard is, changing directions quite often, changing speeds, changing pace, the step backs. He's long enough to get the contest, but at the NBA level, that's Damian Lillard. Yeah. That's Trae Young, that's Fred VanVleet. They might knock down that shot. This is a tough shot for a college guard, but it's not going to be for an NBA All-Star. And we know how every single team has a guard that can make you pay. So I do think there's going to be a learning curve for him, even though I do think he's capable of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, of course. And I think that's going to be early on in his development, but something that over the years and over time he can get really good at.
Yeah. I agree. And this is another example of just kind of being caught flat-footed a little bit. Marcus Sasser, quick, twitchy, one of maybe the tightest handle in the entire draft class. Barely ever turns it over for a guy who, handles the ball like him. And he's quick. He's got that first step and he just can't beat him to the spot. Yeah. Right? Like Sasser's dictating this entire possession. Hendricks is kind of caught in the middle. He doesn't know if he's going to step up too high, put pressure, or kind of drop back for, the drive, and he gets caught. And look, for young bigs, these scenarios are very much so normal. Like, but when you actually are breaking down like the footwork, you have to look like, is this something that is going to be a detriment? And I don't think it's going to be a detriment
Yeah.
But I also don't. I think there's going to be an adjustment.
I mean, for sure. Yeah. He's not going to be Draymond Green from day one at all. But
No.
he's fair to say.
I doubt that.
but the potential is there, and I'm definitely with you on that. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, like the off-ball stuff has been pretty great to watch too. But look at this, like for our listeners who can't see this right now, like this is a nice contest. Long
on a wing,
Yeah.
you know, like, and there's no like low shot clock or anything. It's just early offense, steps up, you know, and look at that anticipation on the contest. I think he's got the scout down. Like, I think he's good at knowing players' strengths. He knows that, you know, Landers Nolley likes to shoot at his size and pull up, and he does a good job of just anticipating, getting a hand up, and you know, causing an air ball here. So there is a lot to like on the ball, and I think he is going to be versatile. I don't know if he's going to be able to, like, I want him guarding ones, but I would be comfortable, I think, 2 through 4 on switches. But I think some of these quicker guys are going to give him a little bit of trouble. Not to say that he's incapable of doing it, because he's had some really, really impressive moments at the same time. Like right here, he's in a drop. Get that shit out of here.
Sick.
Send the shit. Like, you're challenging me? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, sees it the whole way, sends it into the stands.
I will say, Corey, like kind of like a volleyball player, he's pretty good at high pointing balls. On a lot of the blocks that he had, that's
a great point.
He does that a lot, actually. Which means like he has really great anticipation and timing, and obviously like the length and the athleticism helps too. But that really is like an instinct thing. Like volleyball players, like it's hard to high point balls like that. And you know, some of the clips that you're showing and what I watched on film as well is a strength of his for sure.
Yeah, and this is a good possession that kind of shows his overall defensive impact. Like, he's meeting Pajemski at the level, gets back to his man, and then when AirPods drives to the hoop, and that's something that I'm going to trademark, AirPods. Shout out to me for that nickname. He comes over and blocks him at the rim, but he kind of shows it all off. Hedge, recover, and now I'm back. I see where the ball. Give me that shit at. And in the chat, and shout out to everybody who's watching live on YouTube. Moro Z earlier asked, can you see Brandon Pajemski? For me, he should be a first round pick. And I'm not gonna lie, Pods is a guy who has given me a little bit of trouble figuring out exactly where to rank him. On one hand, I think he really moves like maybe like a post prime Goran Dragic, and his advanced stats are kind of out of this world. But at the same time, I really think he struggles against NBA length, and I thought that the possession that we just showed where Taylor Hendricks kind of challenges him, which you're going to get on a nightly basis at the NBA level, is something he's going to have to kind of figure out. It reminds me of Killian Hayes, where Killian was able to finish in Germany against guys who weren't like really super athletic, but when he got up against those athletic guys, it didn't look good. And that's been one of his major things, was that athleticism gap. Now Pods is a good floater, and that's, but if you rely on it too much, you know, teams are just going to step up, and it's going to be a harder shot than it is, you know, when you're not on the scouting report. But I really liked and enjoyed that possession defensively from Taylor Hendricks. And I think, you know, this is where we say he's going to be a 4, is that I think in the post, these bigger guys are just gonna. It's just gonna be hard.
They're gonna go right through him. Yeah,
I think it's gonna be hard for him to move them off. Like, not to say he's incapable, and we'll show a good clip too. But this is just, you know, he's not really doing much here to make the Temple big work on the block here. And ideally, you don't want him in too many of these situations. Like, if he's got to guard some of these, and not even necessarily like Joel and Jokic, like, I think he's going to have trouble against like the Sabonis types too.
Yeah.
You know, who aren't like massive, like behemoth 7-footers, right? Like a lot of these skill guys, I think are maybe going to give him a little bit of trouble as well in the post.
Oh, I'm with you, but like also Corey, like once again, like it all depends on how these NBA teams are projecting things, right? Like all the flashes that we've talked about, and like even in the highlight clips, Corey, that you've shown during this pod, like there are some really nice moments, right? And then how do NBA teams value that and evaluate that, and how they, how much weight they put into this? But he's gonna struggle. He is like even like a Şengün, like he's gonna have a hard time guarding.
Yeah, I
like
mean because of the footwork.
Exactly.
Like the big misses the bunny here. But you could see he kind of gets to his spot and then he does that little step through and like all that crafty stuff. Guys like Şengün, like that's that's his bag. So but I think this isn't where his value lies. Right. And I do think that one of the reasons maybe this South Florida big man misses, this bunny is because Taylor Hendricks is long and you do have to worry about him coming from behind and getting a piece, right? So it's not just like there is that aspect, that positive to it, that like, all right, you still have to shoot over the top and worry about him getting a hand on the ball.
No, for sure, man. That length is there, and of course, like we talked about before, like when he's high pointing balls, that will intimidate people, and they will have that in the back of their minds. So, I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that, from a scouting perspective, that you want to touch on?
Just like the last point that I wanted to make on defense was like, I feel like, and this is normal, this is not me saying like this is a major issue with him, but just like because the guy is such a good shot blocker, I think he can get a little greedy sometimes, and he'll go for balls that he just has 0% chance of getting, and then that leads to an offensive rebound and a putback dunk and things like that. But it's nothing too major, but I think he can kind of tighten that up a little bit.
I think that's fair. All right. So if you're buying stock in Taylor Hendricks, who may you have bought stock in previously?
I just had a couple of names. So for me, this is like, I think his 1% outcome, Corey, is if like everything goes right, I think he could be Kyle Kuzma. If everything goes right was the name that I thought of. I'm not saying he will be Kyle Kuzma, but
that's if he develops the ball skills.
Exactly. The ball skills have to be there for him to be a Kyle Kuzma type. And then I thought of some like weird names like Perry Jones, which is not like the best name. And I realized like if he were to hear this, he'd be pretty upset. And then
people liked him.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he was highly touted before he got to Baylor, and then things happened. Christian Wood type of guy, obviously Wood's I think a little bit bigger, but those were the types of guys that came to mind.
I like that one. So I know Jeremy Grant is a popular one, but again, that is I think a very high end outcome. I think Jeremy's creation ability. Zay on YouTube says Covington maybe, and maybe like later Covington, because there's not like a ton of creation, right? I still feel like Covington was a little bit more like wingy.
Yeah.
Like, but Covington-esque, I could see that. The two names that I came up with are Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, good.
Who's become an absolute terror nightmare defensively for opposing, offensive players. And offensively, even though he came like he was a highly touted offensive prospect, like his game I think is much more simplistic at the NBA level, playing off of other stars, and I think that's good, and I think that's why he's been so impactful and is why people have fallen in love with his game at the NBA level, and why he's been such a steal. The other name, Jabari Smith Jr.
100% fair, Corey. It is fair. What have we learned so far about Jabari Smith Jr. in his young NBA career? So.
Look, Jabari, what did we worry about with him last year? We said we worried about his creation and that translating.
Yeah.
And I guess, his ability to guard like fives. Is he a wing? If you can't dribble the ball comfortably, and I think Jabari was a better ball handler last year. It is very hard to be a wing and size down. Jabari is a 4, and that is offensively, theoretically, Jabari and Şengün should fit. But Jabari's struggling shooting. I wouldn't worry about that too much in the long run. But that defensive, like, can we actually pair Jabari and Şengün together, because they kind of are like who guards who and blah, like that is a thing for Houston. Offensively, what's his role in the NBA right now?
Play
Catch and
finisher.
shoot, play finisher, catch and shoot, pick and pop, space the floor, right? Maybe attack off a closeout. Every once in a while, you get the ball in the mid-range, maybe you jab step, create. Nothing too crazy. Keep it simple. I don't think... I think Jabari was a more mobile mover on the perimeter consistently. I think Taylor Hendricks is a better shot blocker. I think Jabari, while not a strength, maybe was slightly better. I trusted slightly more as like a passer, even though I wouldn't really mention either of those guys doing that for any reason. But I don't think their roles are going to be too dissimilar at the NBA level. And if you are closer to the 10 range, why can't you picture him having a long-term Jabari Smith-esque outcome and outplaying a top 10 thing and being more toward... Because Jabari's going to be fine. And ultimately, I think there's a good chance that he does live up to maybe not the 3rd spot in the draft. I didn't have him there personally. I think I had him at 5 by the time the draft ended. But that 5 to 10 range, why can't Taylor Hendricks have a similar path?
I think this is why you're the best in the business. My mind,
Stop it.
my mind would not even let me go there, because this is the guy who went 3rd in the draft last season. But every point that you made makes sense, because look at all of our, as you mentioned, look at all the concerns we had about Jabari. All that has played out in the NBA, and we are not calling him a bust at all. But we had concerns. And that's kind of played out. And Taylor Hendricks has very similar concerns. And I think NBA teams potentially may look at him kind of the way that they looked at Jabari Smith last year, right? Hoping that he becomes more of a wingy type of player. But I think that's kind of a dream at this point. So that's a good
I agree.
one.
And with that said, talking about dreams, it's now time for America's favorite segment, sponsored by Insert Your Pen brand here. It's time, Albert, for you to sell me this pen on Taylor Hendricks.
First off, Pilot, Bic, all of you guys, Papermate, I'm really disappointed that you guys are just completely just, sitting on your hands, missing this opportunity. But here we go. I'm going to sell you on a pen, a very intriguing pen, a rock solid pen that you would use all the time. That's consistent, that's reliable, and that's Taylor Hendricks. I think Taylor Hendricks, as we've just spent the last hour talking about his game, when you simplify his role and you simplify what you ask him to do, he's going to be really good at it. He's going to be a knockdown shooter. He's going to provide a ton of space. He's shooting over 40% from 3 on high volume in his freshman season at UCF. He's a guy who defensively is going to be rock solid for you. He's going to be reliable, both on ball, off ball, as a help defender. He's going to do so many things for you in those areas where if you just ask him to sit in those roles and to do those things for you, then you're going to be really, really happy. It's when you start asking him to do more than what he's comfortable with is where you're going to start having problems, and he may run into a little bit of trouble. And then you're going to start wondering, what the hell are we doing here? So the pen that I'm trying to sell you on is one that's really effective and really strong in its role. And that's Taylor Hendricks. But please be careful. Be aware. Don't ask too much of him, and then you'll be all right. Is Taylor Hendricks.
If you're taking a state standardized test and the test says you need to fill the Scantron out in pencil, you should fill the Scantron out in pencil.
Yeah.
The pen that Taylor Hendricks provides is a really good pen. And if you need to write a letter, right, that you might want to use that pen. You want to fill out a birthday card?
Sign a loan?
Use that pen.
Yeah.
but you can't use the pen in every circumstance where you're using a writing utensil.
Good.
But that pen is going to get the job done if you need to sign a check. It's going to do a really good job. It's going to be effective at its role. And I think that's Taylor Hendricks.
Corey, I had a friend in high school who filled out his Scantron with a green pen. How do you think
Classic.
he did on that test?
As somebody who has proctored over 100 tests in my life, AP testing,
Wow.
New York State Regents testing,
Mhm.
SATs, I just can't even express how often I'm like, I know I'm saying to you out loud, sometimes on a microphone, that you can't use a gel pen, a purple pen, a red pen, a pencil, whatever. You have to use a black or blue pen. And I know I'm saying it because I know you're hearing it because I'm saying it. But I need you to read the directions, and then I need you to show me and prove to me that you heard me, because there's always one. And I always say there's gonna be one of you, and you want to make sure it's not you who's not listening right now. But there's always one person that it is, because they weren't listening. But that's just, that's an aside.
Oh God. I really quickly, Corey, the kids who can't follow those directions, they probably end up getting the same grade on that test, whether they use the right pen or not.
You're probably right. Albert, tell the people what you're working on this week, where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
This week, I'm writing a piece on Colby Jones from Xavier, a guy that I've mentioned a bunch of times already to Corey that I really like, and Corey always responds, really good, really, really good. So I decided, hey, I should write about this guy that I seem to like for whatever reason. And I got into that, and I compared him to a very famous movie character that I hope you guys enjoy and you guys are into, is what I've been writing about. I also did a home and away pod this week. Got Stephen Gillespie
Really
to
good
join
one.
me. I appreciate that, man. He came on and we got to talk about his scouting trips, talked a little bit about Taylor Hendricks. And then also we talked about, what it's like to be like a content creator thing, like we write a lot and we do pods and we do all kinds of different creating. And I think, it's not always the easiest. And it was fun to kind of pick Steven's brain and about how he goes about his business. So that's what I did. My Twitter handle is at Alberto with an E. Gim is my Twitter handle. My IG handle is GTGNBA is where you can find me.
And you can find me at Corey Teleba on Twitter. You can follow No Ceilings NBA on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, all that fun stuff. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are pumping out great content there. Make sure you rate, review the podcast feed 5 days a week. As Albert said, he did home and away this week. We had Nick and Steven again on the Deep Dives podcast. You had on Monday, you had the Draft Deeper guys do a really fun episode. Loose Cannon Nate showed up, and then following us tomorrow or Friday, if you're listening to this on the feed, is going to be the Tylers returning to action. So really good stuff there. Sign up to NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's free.
Come on.
Subscribe to it.
Come on.
It's free every single day.
Come
You know what I mean? Do it. All right. Until next week, where we will be back covering another prospect. We're out. Peace.
Peace.